Tyler Cavalli and Scott Foster along with you for another edition of our high school football preview show. And Scott, we're already midway through the high school football season, and really this year has flown by.
It really has. It's hard to believe it's October already. Teams have about halfway through. They've kind of, especially in C1 where I've been spending a lot of time, only 16 teams make it to playoffs. And so some of those teams' hopes are really getting pretty thin already.
Well, a couple of those teams we'll have on the air this Friday afternoon and evening like usual. On our sister stations, 93.1 The River, we'll have Ord visiting Cozad. You'll have that game. And then over on KAMI 1580, it'll be an afternoon game as myself and Gene Curtis will have the SEM Overton ball game. Now let's talk about that Ord-Cozad game. Cozad, maybe a little chip on their shoulder, suffering a real tough loss against Gothenburg last week, maybe trying to rebound. It's also homecoming as well, taking on Ord.
I think talking to Coach Cargill, his feeling was that, and I agree with him, that they really dominated that game against Gothenburg, save for two long runs that Gothenburg scored on of 60-plus yards. Otherwise, Cozad controlled that game. They had a 13-0 lead at one time, and really a missed extra point from having this thing tied up and Gothenburg not walking away with a win. So, yeah, I think there's a feeling of we're playing pretty good right now. Unfortunately, that's a loss in district to Gothenburg, so they've got to win out if they've got any shot at all, and they need some help from some other teams. Ord has lost two games. They lost their first two games, even though they've put up a bunch of numbers offensively. But they've won their last three. They won last week against Valentine, which is a district opponent. So they're undefeated in the district. They've still got to play Gothenburg. They still have to play Broken Bow, some of those teams. This should be a fun one here tonight. And there's kind of an interesting side note to this because Nate Wells' wife, who is a head coach for Ord, is the first cousin of the head coach for Cozad, Brian Cargill, and Brian Cargill's brother is an assistant coach for Ord. So a little bit of a family reunion there in Cozad. But homecoming should be a really good game. I'm looking forward to it.
And you'll have that on 93.1 The River. Scott and Darren Hansen will have that game. That game will kick off at 7. Pregame, of course, like usual, 6:35. Now on KAMI 1580, pregame will be at 2:35, as the kickoff will be at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, as the 1-3 Sumner-Eddyville-Miller Mustangs host the 2-2 Overton Eagles. Now, Overton trying to keep their playoff hopes alive after coming away with a win against Stapleton last Friday, and they only need 4 wins, and they seems to be doable. Talking to head coach Paul Husenfeld as he talks to their team and looking to go forward. Their new quarterback Keith Murphy, or I should say, he's been in there most of the season as Sam Kolhanek has been out with an elbow injury. He was slated to be their starting quarterback. Keith Murphy stepped up and has filled the role well, and he's been in there ever since. Now with Kolhanek back, he'll be in there the tight end position. Meanwhile, for SEM, 1-3, their last loss was against Sandhills Thetford, a very tough team that we saw last year in the playoffs. That was last Friday. For SEM, they're still trying to find their way, but talking to head coach Brent Streeter, he said that with this year's team, it's a more experience. He said a lot of players last year were forced to play in their sophomore, freshman year, and this year the juniors are kind of the leaders on this year's team, and he's looking to go forward. He's really excited for this team. So on KAMI 1580, yet again, SEM will be hosting Overton. Kickoff will be at 3 o'clock. Myself and Gene Curtis will have that call. And then over on the river, Scott Foster and Darren Hansen will have Ord at Cozad. Now the Husker game got moved up to 3 o'clock on Saturday, and that'll be opening Big Ten play against the Fighting Illini of Illinois. And that'll be an interesting game for Huskers. Their defense is needing to step up a little bit.
Yeah, they step up would be an improvement for sure. 128th in the nation in pass defense, and by the way, there's only 128 teams in Division I, so that is a problem. They've been pretty good against the run. Of course, not very many teams have ran against them, so it'll be interesting. Certainly, this is one of those games where they kind of need to get going again. DeMornay Pearsonell may be coming back. Jack Gangwish may be coming back. That ought to help them a little bit. We've said the Huskers will take care of business. I hope they can. I don't think Illinois is very good. I think that they can throw the ball around a little bit. But if the Huskers can be focused, can get out there, I think they're a couple touchdown winner here. What do you?
It'll be a close game. On the flip side, Tommy Armstrong has been incredible this year. He's really led this offense. Terrell Newby back there as well, but Armstrong, of course, really probably the leader on offense and probably defense as well.
Top 10 in the nation, too, as a quarterback. His ratings are through the roof.
It'll be interesting for sure. I'm going to go with the upset here, a minor upset. I'm going to say Illinois at Nebraska's homecoming. Unfortunately, I think Illinois defeats them by 2 touchdowns. The defense really has got to step up, and they haven't been impressive. So, but remember, on our sister stations this week, Friday, Scott Foster and Darren Hansen will have Ord at Cozad. It'll be on 93.1 The River. Pregame at 6:35, kickoff at 7. And then on Friday afternoon, before they get kicked off, it'll be myself and Gene Curtis as SEM hosts Overton. Pregame will be at 2:35, and kickoff will be at 3 p.m. on KAMI 1580. Remember, you can catch both of those games on krvn.com. For Scott Foster, I'm Tyler Cavalli. This has been another edition of the High School Football Preview Show.